Okay, so just for fun, because I've never done this before, I'm going to show anybody who might be interested one of my impressionistic images that I took, well, yesterday now, Canada Day, in the evening, just after the sun had set, so you get the darker light. I decided to do an impressionistic style while there were some fireworks going off in the distance. They weren't that high up, and they weren't a big grand display. So they were obviously just store bought across the street with a family playing around with them. So I did the best I could with them, but it turned out kind of neat actually. So this is the original image. It's untouched. So this is raw. So in raw format, there's no sharpening, no saturation, no denoise, no contrast, nothing. That's why it's called raw. So in raw, it actually collects more data. So you have more leeway in actually editing your photograph. More detail will come out as opposed to if you had shot the image in JPEG, where the camera does an in-body work for you. Basically, it does all the saturation and denoise and contrast and exposure, all that good stuff, which is great. Saves a lot of time and with a good camera and good light and all that, and if you've got some skill, basically it's a point and shoot and you're good to go. But not generally when you're shooting raw. That's a bit of a different story. I do have a crop sensor, so that means I'm also not getting as much data, but it's pretty good, all things considered, but it is kind of noisy, especially with low light. You're going to get more noise. So in this image, if I do what's called pixel peeping and I go all the way in, actually go a different spot, you can see that dirty, grainy noise. And I'm not a fan. Some people don't mind it. I detest it. One of the things I don't like, it's one of my other pet peeves in photographs is fringing. No to the fringe. That's another story for another time. Anyway, so my video camera on this cell phone, seems to be picking up the colors pretty well. It's not completely accurate, but it's pretty close. But we're probably going to get those TV lines coming through a little bit, but we'll see what happens. This is an experiment. Okay, so first thing I'm going to try is I'm in Lightroom. This is Lightroom Classic, and I'm going to go over to my right where I would do my edits. All kinds of information here that you probably don't care about right now, so let's just go to the bottom. Very bottom, I can enable these profile corrections for my lens. So let's just see if that makes it look any better first. So I'm going to back out. Okay, enable. So it opens it up a little bit. Disable. Closes it in a little bit and darkens the edges, almost like a vignette. Almost like a fisheye, very subtle. I kind of like it disabled. So I'm going to leave it like that. So moving on, I'm going to go right back to the top and I'm going to start doing my edits right at the top. Sometimes I will do the white balance, so the temperature, the slider here, and you can do some pretty funky stuff with these sliders, but I tend not to touch them. Maybe I'll do some artistic effect with them later on, but I generally don't touch those because I can tell that I remember this in person how it looked, and it's pretty close to how it looked, except the sky was darker and there was a lot more color in the background. But because of this long exposure, it whited out a lot of that color and contrast and all that. So I can now bring that back because I remember what it looked like in my mind's eye. So I'm going to start with the exposure. So I'm going to bring it down just a little bit to see that was what it looked like in person. There was pink and blue in the sky and it was beautiful. So that's about right. So that's at minus 2.37. If I go all the way down, it's too dark, and then you start losing detail. So obviously, and this is personal preference, and it's also how close you want it to be to how it looked in person. So for me, that's how it looked in person. So I'm going to leave it like that. For contrast, same thing. I want to make sure it looks like how it did in person. So I'm going to just adjust this fader here a little bit. I usually don't like to play with contrast too much because it can start to look really overdone like that. It's like really overdone, but it's kind of cool. again, it's personal preference, but now I'm losing detail in the dark areas, so I don't want to lose that ghosty feeling, so I'm going to bring back the contrast just a little bit. So I'm only doing +5. So next, highlights. You would think you would want to up the highlights. No, usually I bring the highlights all the way down, so it's more like low lights, so you can recover more detail. But I'll just show you. If I go highlights all the way up, it obviously brightens that mass of firework in the middle, so I'm just going up and down, up and down. But it blows out some of the color and some of the detail, and I don't want to lose that. So, and I don't want to go all the way down because it's a little too dark. So it's about, so I'm trying to look at all the elements in the picture. I don't want to lose any detail in any of the elements. So I look at the whole scene. I do sort of bit by bit, and then I'll look at the overall scene. So I'm going to say, actually, you know what? Instead of going down for low lights, I'm going +14 in this case. So that actually worked better in my favor this time, +14. Usually I go to the minus. Again, it's different for everybody. Okay, so shadows. I can bring up the shadows or bring them down. So probably won't need to mess with this too much because it's already dark. It's a contrast of a lot of light and a lot of dark. So if I bring the shadows up or down, it's going to mess too much with either. So I have to be careful of the shadows, but I'm just going to see what happens if I bring them up a little bit. And if I bring them up a little bit, it actually brings out this detail more, and it doesn't totally wash out the scene. So I'm actually going to bring up the shadows to 61, +61. Next, whites. Whites, you gotta be careful because they might blow these light colors out. For instance, if I put whites all the way up, it's just a white blob now. The whole sky is just gone. So I'm gonna bring that back down. And if I bring it lower, again, I'm looking for happy medium between the darks and the lights. So that's about there. So it's about +2. Blacks. So you can really go super dark if you bring down all your blacks. And this looks kind of cool with, that contrast with the dark. And you can see more detail there, but this is too black. So I'm going to, again, try for a happy medium where I can see that nice shadow of that tree without making that too dark. And let's just see it now without losing too much light everywhere else. So it's about, let's see how far I can push that. I'm going to go with -4 for now and see what happens. All right, so texture and presence. Texture will obviously bring out some more detail. And for these soft, long exposures, I pretty much crank it. So because I want all this detail to come out. So this is -100 with the texture, so it's very blurry and ethereal and dreamy. If I bring it all the way up, it's a little bit crispy and crunchy. But in this case, it's going to work for the overall end result, so I'm going to leave it like that. It also brings out these branches a bit more, whereas if I go this way, again, they're gone. So it's really nice to bring out that detail. Okay, so clarity can be a little funky sometimes. It can sometimes add extra color where I don't want it and some harshness. So, and actually you can lose some of the colors too, I've noticed. So this is cranked, and now I've lost all the warmer, or all the sort of pinky and red colors. Whereas if I back off clarity, those colors come back, which you can't, this cell phone's not totally picking that up. But so I'm just gonna, again, it's a happy medium. And I still want it to look dreamy, but I want those fireworks to still stand out. So I'm just, I'm actually gonna do -11. So I'm not going to up the clarity for this one. Okay, dehaze. When you up the dehaze, it adds blue. So there. And and in this case, it's adding this orangey, yellowy orange that I'm not crazy about, and some olive green, brown, which I'm also not crazy about, and it just looks really fake and a little weird. So I don't use a lot of the dehaze, obviously. If you back off of it, if you go the other way, then you get really ghosty, dreamy, ethereal, almost like fog. So again, it just depends on what you're looking for. Wow, this video is really long now, sorry. I don't know if I can even upload this anywhere. We'll see, probably on YouTube. Okay, so I'm going to get back the dehaze to where I want it. So I'm actually putting it at plus 12 because I do want to bring out some of that pink that seems to be coming out in the clouds again, and a little slight blue sky. So that's plus 12. So far these are the settings, and this is Lightroom. So next is vibrance and saturation. You have to be careful of these two because sometimes a little bit can go a long way. And if you want it to be like really oversaturated, colorful, just for fun, I'll show you what that's going to look like. I'll put the vibrance at 100. So that's what that does. So it brings out these purples and greens and a lot more blue and more of this jumbled look, which I'm not totally a fan of. So it's overdone. It's oversaturated. And this is obviously not what it looked like in person. I'm going for the more natural look, how it looked to me in person. Okay, and that would be about like that. So that's actually plus 39. And it didn't actually do a lot. It just put some subtle colors in various places, so not too bad. Saturation, if I up the saturation full tilt, again, it's going to look really fake and a little crazy. So there, it brings out a lot more of the reds. Well, it brings out a bunch of everything. So I don't really want to use too much saturation, but I do want to bring some color, a little bit more color in these fireworks. So I am going to put it up a little bit. So it's about 21. So 39 and 21. And it didn't overdo anything. It just brought out a little bit more color in this sort of more white, light colored part. So that's fine. And it brought out a little bit of the green in the trees, which is nice. Beautiful forest green. I love that. So moving on, I'm going to go down here. So there's tonal curves. So there's another place with tonal curves that has highlights, light, dark, and shadows and whatnot. Probably don't need to mess with those too much, but I'll just play with them a little bit. So let's see what happens. So it's fun to just put the sliders back and forth and just look, what is it doing? Do I like it? Do I not? So when I up the highlights more, it's bringing out more light in here, which I do like. So I'm putting that at plus 45. Okay, let's see what the light does. So that's, looks nice with that pink, but it whites out those colors in there, so I don't want to do too much there. So that's about plus 34. Darks, so I can either go really dark all the way, and then you're just basically only getting the firework part, which is kind of cool. It almost looks like a pink heart in the sky. But yeah, I'm looking for the overall scene and how it looked in person. So back to business. So for darks, let's see. I think I'm actually going to put it at plus 9 because now I can see even more of that nice greenish color and more of those trees, which I like. Okay, shadows. Bring up the shadows, so you'll get basically the outline of the shot. All those shadows will be brought up. And it looks quite dreamy and ethereal, and you can see a lot more of that greenish color on the ground. That's the grass, of course. So the grass looks almost like water, like green water. And there's this sort of green fringing, greeny yellow fringing happening around the trees now. And I'm not sure if I like that. So anyway, I'd rather it look more natural. So that's about like that. So I did up the shadows 77, but do I want it to look like this? I'm not sure yet. Again, it's just personal preference, and you might want to do 3 different versions of one photo too. So I'm putting it at plus 45 for fun for now. So we'll just see. Okay, so next, now this gets really interesting because now we're getting into the color sliders. This can be all kinds of fun. So you get these different hues. So the full color spectrum, variations of those hues, and then the primary hues. And then luminance is kind of cool because you can brighten the hues or darken them. Now, so let's start with up here. So this is right now sort of in the middle of what red would look like, normal red. If I want it to look more sort of in that spectrum where it's more burgundy, almost fuchsia and burgundy in that spectrum, I can bring the slider down and see what it does. So let's just see what it does in this particular photo. Now, these colors, in order for you to be able to adjust these colors, they have to exist in the data in the photo first, or nothing's going to happen. So I would say that this sort of burgundy fuchsia color doesn't really exist too much in the photo in and of itself. But you never know. Sometimes the camera and your eye aren't seeing everything until you go in Lightroom and start playing around and you realize, oh wow, there's a lot more of that color in there that I realized. Now, I'm going to slide this all the way over and we'll see if anything comes out. And see, there's really no difference except for way over here. A little bit comes out there. Hang on. So where this was really yellow, if I bring that slider down, yeah, it brings down some of the yellows and adds a little bit of more, well, just a touch more red. So it doesn't do a whole lot in that section. So I'm going to see what it does in this middle section, if anything. So I'm going to slide it back up and down, up and down. And yeah, it brings a little bit more of the reds out in these fireworks. So I'm going to actually put it all the way to -100 for this. Now for the orange, this might have a bigger impact because there is quite a bit of orange in here. So if you watch the orange area, I'm going to bring the slider down. And yeah, it turns everything basically very dark orange, almost, well, basically red, which is not what I'm looking for. I want it to be still as natural as possible. And that really dark red doesn't really jive with these greens either. So I'm just gonna, yeah, keep it a little more continuity with the other colors that are in the scene. And I'm actually, I think I'm gonna keep it, let's see, what do I want? Just -3. What the heck? I might change it again later. Now for the yellows. So obviously there's a lot of yellow in this shot, especially over here. So let's see what that does. It would technically turn these yellows more orangey color. So let's see what happens. Oh yeah, so that's all orange now. So it took away the nice yellow. So if you bring it back up, there's the yellow back. So that one you don't want to play too much with. Let's just see if I want to bring up more yellows though. And it's interesting too because it goes up into the green spectrum here with that yellow slider. It kind of goes into the green. So you can see how much green comes out when you play with that slider and how it backs it off. So I think I'm not going to do too much with that yellow slider. Let's just see. Yeah, I'm going to keep that at 0. Now, the green slider, this can sometimes have a huge impact on your scene because especially outdoors, you've already got green in the shots a lot of the times, especially in the non-winter months. So let's see what this does. I'm going to crank it all the way up to the darker green area, so to the right. And you can see definitely more green comes out there. I'm going to back it off. Yeah, more brownish, more green. So again, I'm trying to keep the color palette kind of together, and that's a little too dark green for the rest of the scene, but it does look like a nice forest green, but it's too much. So I'm just going to back that off and keep it more natural. So it's only up 12 to the darker, richer kind of green color. So that's for now. Now, this aqua and blue, you have to be careful of that too because there's already a lot of aqua and blue in the shot, so this could make it look too fake. So I'm just going to slide all the way over. And this basically is not doing a whole lot either way, so I'm going to leave it at 0. Next one, the blue. Now, when it goes into sort of a purple, there you can see the purple, so it's too purple. So I want to still keep it the way it basically looked in person. So let's see. I mean, you don't even have to do any of these sliders if you don't want to, obviously. It's just to bring out a bit more color in certain areas, especially if the raw image itself didn't really pick them up. So I think I'm just going to leave it at 0, actually. That's a tough one. -7. So it's going a bit into the greenish blue, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Actually, maybe that's too, now it's too bright up here. So I think I'm going to put it back to 0 maybe. Yeah, let's just leave it at 0 because it was getting a little bit too blue-green at the top here, which I didn't want. Okay, so now the purples, this can also make a difference because that's a purpley pink. So let's go all the way up. Yeah, and it just makes the whole sky pink, and that's not how it was. And then you get this weird dotting and noise, so that's not what I'm looking for. And it's too much pink for the scene anyway. It's kind of cool though. But I'm gonna back that off. Bring it down there. That's actually the purple slider, so I'm gonna just leave it at 15. Magenta, same thing. We gotta be careful. But in this case, apparently there's not a lot of magenta in the shot, only in one little spot. So I'm just gonna leave it at 0. Okay, now for the actual primaries. So this is red. I can go as much red as I want or as little red in the picture as I want. So this obviously already has red. And let's just see what the slider does. If I crank it up, it makes a little bit of color noise there. This looks like color noise. It doesn't look quite nice. It puts some weird lines in it. So I'm gonna not go too crazy with that. So I've actually got it at 55 though, and it didn't make a huge difference. So I might just put it back to 0, because why use the slider if you don't need it? Okay, so orange. Probably don't want any more orange. It's already orangey. And in this case, I'm almost tempted to take out some of the orange to make it a little more cohesive with those greens. But see there, it's less, standing out and kind of overpowering. I almost kind of prefer it like this, where I basically brought the orange down by -65, kind of got rid of it. So I don't know, I'm kind of digging it without the orange, but again, you can do, as many versions of these pictures as you want. So I think, yeah, I'm gonna back it off a little bit, but 43. So I backed it off by 43. So yellow, I don't really want more yellow, because I'm not a huge yellow fan anyway. But maybe I'll back it off a little bit. Yeah. Wait, hang on. 32. It's about +25 just for fun. Leave it at that. Aqua, let's see what we get. Nothing, so I'm gonna leave it. Blue is probably gonna bring out a lot more blue at the top that I don't want. Yeah, that's too much blue, and then it puts this blue fringing all over the green trees, which I'm not crazy about. So let's go back and probably leave it at 0. Actually, I'm gonna go -2 on the blue just because it's still a little too bright at the top. So I'm actually gonna go -10. It's a little less bright at the top. Now purple, it just leaves these purple lines, purple noise, so that's not very nice. So I'm not really gonna bother with that. Maybe just a touch of it. Magenta, same thing. Without the magenta, with the magenta, it puts those lines, which I'm not crazy about. So I'm gonna back that off. Okay, so here's luminance can be fun. So we're now in luminance. This is now a 23-minute video. I was not intending it to be. So luminance for red. So this is going to brighten up any reds, make them glow a little more, but you're going to lose the red richness. So it depends on, again, personal preference. So I'm just going to raise that up and see what happens. So when I do that, it whites out the nice colors in that area there. So I don't really want to lose those colors. If I bring the luminance down, it can bring a little bit extra red color in. So let me just see the whole scene. I think I'm going to leave it at -33. So it's bringing in a little bit more color, but less light. But we got enough light, lots of light, so that's good. Okay, orange. Let's see what happens when we bring up the brightness of the oranges. It kind of creates an orange heart there, which I kind of like. So I think, yeah, this really lights everything up quite a bit more. So I'm just going to go about +20 there for the orange. Yellow. Really, if you back off all the yellow, you really notice it. It's gone. So it's darkened it out and kind of wiped it out almost. So I'm going to bring it back up. And there's your nice bright glowing yellow, which I don't mind in this case. I'm usually not, like I said, a yellow person, but in this case I don't mind it because it's bringing out the fireworks more. So I'm leaving that at plus 28. Green, let's see if it brings up some of the brightness in the green trees. Let's see what happens. Yes, a little bit, but it's just that one section kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, so nope, back down. We want it to sort of even out, so I will leave it at that. Aqua, it brings out these turquoise colors right here, so that's kind of fun, so I'm cranking that to 100. Blue, this might lighten up the blue in the top. Yep, and now it's like white, which is actually kind of cool. It looks ghosty and ethereal and interesting. I like that. And you can really see the ghosty trees, but if I bring it back down, yeah, it just kind of gets a little too shaded. So I don't like it in the minus, so let's go plus. I kind of like a little bit of that white. It's quite ethereal, so I'm going to leave it like that. So I've got the luminance, the light luminance for the blue at plus 42. Let's see what the purples are going to do here. So this upping the luminance for the purples wipes out everything or washes it out too much. So nope, not going to do that. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave that slider. In fact, I think I'm going to bring it down slightly, minus 18. So it brings a bit more purple into this section, and magenta doesn't seem to do a lot either way. So I'm going to leave magenta alone. Okay, so then we have this color grading wheel down here for shadows and highlights, or sorry, midtones, highlights, and then the overall scene. So I'm going to just go to shadows. So you can change the hue and saturation and again the luminance, and then you can also do some blending and balance, which is almost like a luminance, but well, we'll get there. Hang on. So I'm going to stop this video for a moment. Actually, no, because I don't want this to go over half an hour. So I'll just do this quickly. So if I do the saturation, and there's the hue bar, right? So it changes the actual hue. So I'm just going to leave it at ground zero there, and I'm going to up the saturation. You'll see what happens. So the hue is targeted at this reddish orange right now. So I'm just going to go all the way, and obviously you can see it does that reddish orange look, which is actually kind of pretty, but that's not how it looked in person. So I would say it's more like about like this, maybe a little less because we're losing too much blue. So I'm going to put it about 20, 21. Next, I'm just going to go to the midtones, same thing. I'm still going to leave it on that red, and see, it's too pink. So just, I've got it at 8. Then highlights, too washed out, too much pink, so nope. Global is just going to make everything red, which I'm not crazy about. So you can do all of that with any of these colors on the wheel. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some luminance, gets rid of some noise, but I'm going to bring back the detail. And that's it. So I want to check, whoops, there's the whole scene. So it's ethereal and it's still got some detail, some interesting colors. And this is my take on it for now. And I'm going to go back up to check my texture. Yeah, my texture is good, and clarity's at minus 11. So I'm going to see if I can bring back some clarity a little bit. So now I've got it actually at plus 56, and we're done. So check it out. I will post this video and the picture, and you can let me know your feedback. And again, it's personal preference. This picture can be done any which way, but this just shows you some of what Lightroom can do. Hope you enjoyed. Take care. Bye for now. Signing off.